Board of Selectmen meeting on hearing number 2 on the Charter Revision Commission draft report. Today's Thursday, June 12th, 2025. Let's all rise again for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Karen, can you lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we were just talking about whether or not there will be, in the last few meetings, we've had people give public comment, and the whole commission has been here for a couple of them. Sort of you've gone through and commented on whether or not you wanted to consider some of the comment or not. A few weeks ago, there was a list of items a cumulative list of items that came from public comment, and you went through each one and decided whether or not you wanted to take them up, and you actually did take up a number of them and incorporate changes in the charter. We've gotten more public comment since then, in particular from one person named Kathleen Griffin. We've got a lot of emails from her, but I think it's sort of incumbent on us to read those comments and determine which ones we want. At this point, it's really, I believe it's incumbent on us to determine what we want to bring to the CRC and what we want them to consider. And I do read Kathleen's emails when they come in, and we can do a search on her name. And if there's something that we think they should take up, we should write it down and give that back to them on a list in the next meeting and ask them to consider it. Not sure whether there's a forum before next week that's, certainly doesn't appear we're going to be able to do it tonight. There aren't that many people here to give public comment, and the CRC isn't here. There's only 2 members of the CRC here tonight to determine whether or not they want to take up a matter. But it's now the Board of Selectmen's job to tell the CRC at the next meeting what we want them to take up. So I would say, we should read through all the comments. Many of the comments up till last week were discussed and debated in public, and decisions were made. And like what you were saying, Brenda, whether or not they wanted to take it up, they thought it was the right thing or not. The CRC did discuss, and then in several instances said, no, or let's take a vote, not interested, or and that's been happening over the last several meetings. So, yeah.
But we can still, even though things that came up during those public sessions that were Board of Selectmen meetings, if there's something that even the sense of the members that were participating, they may not have been willing to take it up, but I think that we still have the opportunity based on...
We as in Board of Selectmen.
We as in Board of Selectmen, and based on, we have another public hearing right now, based on feedback that we continue to get from the public up until, my understanding is, our next meeting, to just act and give guidance as a board to the CRC, and then they will go back and take our recommendations and do with it what you will, and before it comes back to us. And very much appreciate the conversations that were had at the last few meetings, but appreciate that it's still somewhat of a work in progress.
Yeah, so I think the ball will be in our court next week.
And tonight too, right?
And tonight, it's our job to create a list of things we want the CRC to reconsider or consider. And we need to come up with that list, and a lot of that would be drawn off of, the comments that have been written or spoken in public. I can think of a couple that I already believe I'm going to ask for, and there's been some widespread yes.
I could be wrong, but I don't think there's anything that we wouldn't consider if you put it on your list, right? So we're
I believe you actually have to consider.
Yeah. So it's not like we're rejecting anything in a comment that was made, even if you wanted us to reconsider it, we absolutely will. So.
Right. There's definitely things that we've all voiced concern over. I think some of us have voiced concern over, well, I don't need to front run this, but we all know what we've voiced concerns over. And
Well, I was just more talking about the process. The last time there was a considerable amount of work, at the table. So yes, we come forward with information and feedback from the public, and from other board members, but, the whole point of having the commission is to have that give and take, and the charter attorney was particularly helpful during the last go-around because he knew, that's what he does for a living. So we had a lot of good, you could say, hey, how does this line up with what's in the charter and how will it impact? And then he could say, you can't do it this way, or you have to word it this way. And that's just really helpful because none of us are attorneys. So I feel like I needed the guidance then, and I wanted the guidance now. Obviously, this is, to me, a very important document. It'll dictate how our town is governed for, who knows, it could be another 20 years before it's even touched. People are terrified. So I just want to make sure we're getting it right and that we're not missing anything. And it's so good to have, I feel, you guys sitting, here at the table, because you're the one who's been listening to it for the last 9 months really closely, as opposed to us who haven't been. So we're getting all this information, and it's, I hear good points from Judy, I hear good points, from our esteemed Board of Ed member and, from members of the public. And so you're just trying to figure out how it all, is that a good idea? Would it be helpful? Some things are a matter of opinion, and some things are a matter of it should be cleaned up so it doesn't say something that you don't want it to say. If that makes any sense.
yeah, Eric, Commissioner Treshik.
First, I would actually echo what Commissioner Wackerman said as far as absolutely will consider any of the recommendations that the Board of Selectmen comes back to the Charter Revision Commission with. That is our role, and I do agree with the characterization. The ball is really in your court at this point to tell us what we should reconsider or consider again if in fact we did not recommend a change. So, to Selectwoman Kupchak's point, I think we'd welcome the opportunity to have a discussion. I believe that's my understanding of the agenda for the 24th, I think it is. I should look at my calendar, where there would be discussion, where presumably you would come to the table with, hey, let's talk about boom, 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 boom. And potentially that leads to a vote, where at that point you vote it back to us. But we'd welcome those opportunities. You referenced something next week. I don't think we have anything scheduled for next week.
So I mean, the 24th.
Okay, the 24th is the next one
24th,
scheduled from a charter
That's not
perspective.
next week?
No.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
but absolutely welcome that, to explain the reasoning, to discuss some of the challenges and opportunities, but not trying to dissuade any changes.
Yeah, I think I went to, I think, all of the meetings for the last Charter Revision Commission, and I've watched, or been to all of the meetings for this one. I think in the last one, there was a lot of, there were a couple issues that people were concerned about and spoke up. It came to, probably more people came to some of the interim meetings and spoke up. There was something about minimum minority representation by district on the RTM. And including myself, I spoke up and I didn't like that. And then the commission heard whether it was support or lack of support and took votes along the way as to whether or not they wanted to keep that in or not. I believe the same type of thing has happened. We haven't had anything quite like that, no real suggestions this time around that have piqued that sort of public interest. We haven't had any full rooms for this Charter Revision Commission. But, there have been a lot of meetings and a lot of public comment. Mostly, Judy's come to all of the meetings and, not the huge issues, but there have been a lot of public comment and tweaks made along the way. I don't think this is different. The process has been the same. And now we're at a point where we as a Board of Selectmen can go back and look at all those past decisions that the CRC has made, whether they didn't want to take something up or, they put something in that took it out, we can ask them to put it back in. And that's what we should do. So we need to do our homework over the next couple of weeks and figure out what we want to ask them to reconsider.
Well, I think just to say that it's not that homework, it's good, after the sort of public comment period, the board sat with the Charter Commission and went through all of the different input changes, how they impact, just, open discussion, not just for our sakes, for the board's selectmen's sake, but also for the public's sake, to see sort of like how the sausage gets made kind of thing. I just think that would be beneficial to sort of carry that same, believe me, some of those meetings were so long. I think a couple of the deliberative meetings that we had, they went on forever. And I know the town attorney actually back then went to one of the select person's house 2 days a week, 6 hours at a clip, to meet and go over every single change and with other people too. So, I just want to make sure that, again, I'm not an attorney, I can look at these things and I could say I like it. But I think it's beneficial to have the charter, attorney here, having you guys here who've been, living this and breathing it. Just to have the dialogue is all. For then, there's, on our agenda, it says deliberative today, but.
Were you,
I'm
a couple of weeks ago, Eric walked us through, sorry.
I'm just going to call a point of order. Not just for order of the agenda, but being that this is a public hearing and
It's first, you're right.
it's first on the agenda, and I want to just be sensitive to those members of the public.
You're right.
And this is, don't want to cut, this is a good discussion, but I think just.
Good point. I agree.
Yeah, okay, so item 3 is this public hearing number 2 on the Charter Revision Commission draft report. And so this is the time for anyone here who wants to give public comment. And if you do, I would ask that if you haven't signed up on the sheet at the podium, please go speak at the podium so that we can ensure that people can see you and hear you on FairTV. Make sure you sign your name and address. Anyone want to give public comment?
I'll go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Anyone else? All right. Hello, my name is Paul Levy. I live at 499 Melville Avenue. I'm a relatively new resident to town, but got my MPA at Fairfield University as part of the program. Did, at the time, a paper on the 2006, the charter that we're now revising. So dug into it, it's about a 10-page paper. It's a lot of fun. So it's been interesting to watch this go around. Couple comments. I watched the whole public hearing last week. I was traveling for work. I have to tell you, FairTV is great business travel watching. Download it and watch it.
If you have insomnia.
Yes. But so after reviewing that and listening to a couple of their meetings, a few thoughts. So on the seal, totally think it's a great idea to move it out of the charter. I'm wondering if a referendum should be required after RTM approval so that it's not just a mere ordinance change or a mere action of the RTM. That way, it's not just by the whims of each RTM control. Again, thinking future-proofing. Voters could say, okay, well, we want a referendum through the provision there, but then that's a special referendum that's going to cost the town money. So perhaps just requiring a referendum at the next general election, whether that is municipal or state. I fully support getting rid of the residency requirements for the police chief and the fire chief. I think the town attorney, though, is something to consider. That's more of a not political, but governance thing to think about. And the current town attorney, past town attorneys have served on town boards, they've been involved, so they have an understanding that somebody from outside of town may not. So just something to consider there. The COO is a fantastic idea, and I like that we're memorializing it in the charter rather than just saying, well, this is potentially a position. I do want to agree with some of the comments about making it an ex officio status. If you look in the Connecticut general statutes, the selectmen are to superintend the affairs of the town, as Ms. Vitale pointed out last week. And so I think there's something to be said about separation between the selectmen and an employee of the town. But it's maybe something to consider is that the first selectman can request to the chair that on a particular meeting where he or she can't attend, that that person stand in the place of the first selectman. So that way it's not just an ongoing kind of carte blanche allowance. And I think we have to be careful there because it could become an intro to a manager-like position. And you know, there's been some pushback in town over that. I grew up in West Hartford. West Hartford's one of the first communities, actually the first community in Connecticut to adopt manager council governance, one of the first in the United States. There's a lot of good things about manager council governance, but one thing that's lost is meetings like this, committee meetings at night, boards of finance, discussion of really the nitty-gritty. A lot of those meetings occur during the day when people are working. And so we have something really special here in Fairfield. Again, I'm a relatively new resident to town, but it's kind of it's an honor to see all of this going on and to see all the people who have worked so hard to put it together. And I think we would lose something by moving in that direction, but it's definitely something to consider moving forward. I know we're probably not going to get to it this time around, but I do think a larger Board of Selectmen would be a good idea, if only to avoid these FOIA issues. And, you know, if you do have a situation where you have a former first selectman and a current first selectman, it might be a good idea that they can meet outside of the table and consider, you know, transition issues. Right now, that's prevented by FOIA. So thanks so much for listening. Thanks for all the time everyone's put in, and it's really humbling to be here and to comment. Thanks.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Paul Hovey.
Paul.
Yeah.
What commissions would you?
Same.
Your comments are amazing. Thank you so much. But I do have a question.
My pleasure. Yep.
I just want to make sure I understand. So you know, after we vote on the charter, if we pass it, then it does go to the ballot box. So are you thinking that there should be a separate referendum on any change in the seal?
Correct. Just the seal requirement. I think that would be a nice middle ground. We're removing it from the charter.
Right.
To say, okay, the RTM is, as the legislative body is looking at this, they've decided it, great. But it's very important. I mean, it's on every document, it's on this podium, it's on employees' uniforms, you know. When you go get a marriage license, you're greeted by it in the town clerk's office, it's everywhere. So I think it's something that the people should be directly able to weigh in on. And it gets rid of the political of, well, should we have a referendum, should we not? What's the cost of a referendum? How many people are going to turn out at a referendum? Just say the next general election. And then that way, it gets removed from the everyday action of the RTM.
It's a really interesting idea. I mean, I kind of really love the idea of inviting local artists, even at the high school, you know, to submit their recommendations, and we could have like a contest. So not necessarily like choosing one or not, you know, choosing or not choosing, but which one do you like the best?
Especially if you did an election where you don't have other questions, you could have multiple, and then people could have a pamphlet and be greeted by posters at the polls.
Yeah, we've got an art commission now. They could run that as like a contest or something. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I thought his comments were very helpful, and, you know, just to be clear that what's in the charter says we cannot change the seal. So just to be able to, you know, have that opportunity. I agree with you when I heard about the RTM, you know, having it, which is fine, but I think there should be an open vote of the community. I always thought that we would have a contest, you know, let people submit artwork. But I like the idea of going to the polls because, you know, it's during an election and people would be more inclined to vote on it. I like it.
It's general election that way.
Yeah.
Just be within the next
And
cycle.
maybe the RTM could, you know, pick from the top whatever, so many 5 or whatever number, and it would be on. I like that.
As long as they all have a sailboat in them. There's gonna be a lot of silver.
Or lighthouse.
Lighthouses and
Lighthouse, I
silver.
think, is the given.
Yeah, lighthouse is actually
Yeah.
nice.
Well, thanks a lot.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, and Judy, you've got to have some public comment, please.
Oh, please. Come on, Judy.
Impart your, no, come on, Judy. No, nothing? All right, Jen Jacobson has public comment.
You're not supposed to be like calling out people. I mean, it's voluntary.
We're here, it's 10 of 7, and it's too early to adjourn.
Well,
I thought both their comments were really helpful last,
Absolutely.
comment. Jen, you had me like whiplash, like flipping, going, wait a minute. What is she talking about?
Sorry, I gave you the page numbers.
No, I liked it. There was no page number on my copy, by the way, and I'm gonna ask for one with page numbers, because that would really make life a lot easier. Yeah, no,
Okay.
it was good. Helpful.
Eric? Well, you're not a public member.
I don't think I have more public comment.
Nobody in the chat.
Okay, anyone on chat? Chelsea? No? Okay. Well, the next item is the Board of Selectmen discussion on the CRC draft report, including discussions only of any potential recommended changes to be submitted to the CRC. May I have a motion? Seconded. Yeah, so are you prepared for any recommended changes? Because I have a couple.
Well, I wanna,
I mean, we're not voting, we're not taking action.
I think this was
No,
just
but
discussion.
discussion, yeah.
Would it be all right, with you if Karen, Eric came? Sat
Yeah,
there?
if you want to sit at the table, that's fine, or if you
So
want
we're
to.
sitting over there.
Open to it? Absolutely.
Absolutely open to it. Who would like to start the discussion?
Do you have anything?
I have like 3 things probably. You want to start?
I will just, to start, reiterate,
Sometimes it's hard to hear in this room because there's a
Oh, okay.
system, so speak
Who
loud.
wants to speak up? Okay.
I'm hearing the women,
okay.
and then I'll shout.
I shout because I'm hard of hearing, yeah. So,
I think just to reiterate comments I made at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Really asking the commission to revisit the stance on the Board of Education about the 6-3, looking at that language. The board moved, collectively, we had put that before the commission as a recommendation. My feeling on that has not changed. My comments about I'm not comfortable with the COO being ex officio to every board and commission. Very much appreciate, the first selectman's very busy schedule. And as I believe I said at the last meeting, and remember the public spoke today, that I think that the first selectman should have the opportunity, I think just in some of these instances, communication with the chair, if he or she cannot be present, can just ask that person, just the respect of the COO or any other staff member or a member of the Board of Selectmen to represent. In terms of the delegation, I think that the current charter has the delegation to the Board of Selectmen. It came out in the version before us. I don't think it was the intent of the commission, so I would just ask to have that language to be put back in, just for clarity's sake.
what was that? I'm sorry.
Say that again?
The delegation by the RTM?
No, I think it was just, I don't have.
Oh, right.
let me-
That was Jen Jacobson's concern that it could strip power from the first selectman, that the RTM could move power from the first selectman to, oh, that's a different point.
No, I think it was more, let me just get it.
Delegation of authority?
It was the delegation, the town officers, officials, let me get it in front of me.
It used to say.
It said it used to be
Approve or something.
that you could, yeah.
Remember, Eric, you
I'll find it, but that,
In the clean draft, it's 62A7, I believe we're discussing.
62A7. 62A7.
62A7, I believe, is the discussion point. And it, can I speak?
yes,
Yes,
The intent is not, was not to remove select persons from that available pool of delegation or potential delegates. But I think the fair concern we raised that maybe the current language does, so we should have that reconsidered.
and the other thing that I think there was some, just to your point about the end ordinance, the James had actually raised this, that there was some confusion about the,
I thought we cleared that up at the table, didn't we?
well, I think that we did, but again, like, these discussions are not, formal direction by the Board of Selectmen at the past two meetings. It was part of a public hearing, so just want to put that out there again. That's it to start, just top of my head, and I would ask just for a discussion about the confusion about the terms for town officers. That it seemed that we, and the just cause provisions, that it seemed like we were all kind of had concerns about the current language.
As being at-will employees, yeah, that was definitely one that concerns me.
Yeah. So I think that, I don't have a recommendation right now, but that's something that I would look forward to discussing, the three of us.
Maybe, if you don't mind, Bill,
Go ahead.
Kathleen Griffin did bring this up in one, I just happen to have this one open. She said, if you feel the need to add clarity around the lack of specified term length, then I suggest you use the word indefinite, such as Darien uses 25A for execution of the function specified in section 24 of this act. There shall be a superintendent of public works who shall be appointed by the Board of Selectmen for an indefinite term, or who shall be a professional, so on and so forth, possessing whatever technical. I don't suggest you start adding terms that coincide with new first selectman or Board of Selectmen term. That gets complicated. I should speak louder, sorry, Judy. Complicated fast when makeup of the Board of Selectmen changes midterm or change in FS midterm. Just clarify that the terms are indefinite if you feel new language is necessary. The issue of term length is different than the cause conversation, which you will ultimately need to work out. And then there's some other information. I don't know if you have a suggestion. I think what we've had for years has been, right, the tree warden has whatever year, so-and-so has 3 years, this one has 2 years, some have none. And then public safety have contracts. So, I mean, I just personally think that we will have, it will be impossible to recruit anybody to come work as a department head if they think that the minute an election changes, they're out the door. Or if they disagree about something. So I just think that as far as, attracting the best talent for our town, so far we have, based on what we've had. So I don't know if there's a way to work it out that we would still be able to attract the talent we have been able to attract.
We fully expect to reconsider this one in the way that we expect you to direct us to do so, and we will. Speaking on behalf of Chair DeWitt, this is something we had discussed. This is one where he would respectfully request some very specific guidance. Our position as a commission was that indefinite, only removed for cause, created a situation where you potentially did not have the best talent over the long term, and incentive of performance and such. And so that's why we took that position. But obviously, we expect to be reconsidering this. So we would ask that you give us some direction on where to go on this one, because we want something that, if addresses the core concern that it is unclear and can be interpreted a lot of different ways in the 2006 charter that we operate under today.
Yeah, yeah.
So we want to provide that clarity.
Okay. I'm glad that that you're expecting to reconsider it, because it was the only item that department heads were coming to me about, and I agree with them that it sticks out like a sore thumb. Like, why would you making this change from for cause to without cause made it stick out, and naturally people are asking why, and I think in reality, you don't get rid of an employee if they're doing a good job. You get rid of an employee that's underperforming, and it's incumbent upon the leader to be able to articulate why that person's not doing a good job, so they can be terminated for cause. That's incumbent upon the person who's leading the department or who's in the town to determine the cause. And it has happened in the past, and I'm sure, it can be done. To make it, without cause, I think makes it too easy. And I can see why it could scare people off. So, they're clarifying it makes sense. These arbitrary terms for different positions, I don't think those have led to, from what I know, I don't think the Board of Selectmen has ever not elected not to, re-up the tree warden's, term. Like, they're kind of arbitrary terms. It's kind of strange to have to vote on, the tax assessor every couple of years. And I think it would be kind of strange to come into a situation where you have a 2-year term as a tree warden. Like, you're dedicating your life to this job, and why would you have a 2-year term? It should be indefinite. I think without the terms and without, additional verbiage, the assumption would be, and the default would be, that you have the job. It's your job, and unless you do, you don't perform well, then you'll be fired for cause. So I would ask that, I will ask that we change the without cause to for cause back, I think, the way it was, because I don't really see a problem with the way it was. I do think it was weird with the terms, though, and it did feel uncomfortable voting on, the tax assessor's, position when, you don't join a town for a job for a 2-year term. You take a job for an indefinite term, and as long as you're doing a good job. So, yeah.
I agree with that, and I think that the addition of indefinite, and I think that this part of the charter had not been executed consistently. We voted for the tree warden and the tax assessor and the internal auditor, I think, and it felt
It was weird.
It felt very uncomfortable.
I'm not sure they always did.
It felt. I don't think they always.
think
that's what I'm saying. I think that
it's
we did,
Phil-
but I don't think in the past they always did.
Yeah, they just assumed that it was going to.
It was somewhat performative, because they were doing a good job, and if they weren't doing a good job, then it would be up to the CEO of the town to basically hold staff accountable. So I respectfully just disagree with the assessment that it would not lead to us not having the best talent.
I do understand where it came from.
I do. I
It
absolutely.
came from a group of gentlemen or people who work in the private sector, and no one in the private sector.
You corrected it, but it took a second.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You said gentlemen. And then
Oh, thank you, gentlemen and ladies. So I understand where this came from, because I think the idea, from what I heard, was, hey, why should a municipal employee have this assumption of a job for life when in the private sector, no one has an indefinite term. You could be fired terminated without cause in any company, which isn't 100% true, but it's not the private sector, and when you join a municipality, it's, you're not making as much money, as in the private sector, and we have to have some allure, and, I don't think, and you can terminate people, you just need to, do performance reviews, so.
And I think, and also, there's also budget constraints every year for those employees that are not covered by collective bargaining. You always just run the risk of, the funding not being available for certain positions, or that discussion every year, which is somewhat different.
I think with cause,
Can we speak? Can we speak?
yeah,
I think it's part of a state statute.
You wanna-
State statute.
You want to give
Come
public comment, Judy?
No, I just want to yell it out.
Come on.
You have to go to the
the
is it
podium.
part of the state statute?
To say it's part of the state.
Yes, you have to go to the-
state statute.
Is it part of state statute?
What, the terms?
I can go up, because I had the same thought, I'll go back.
The some positions have terms by state statute. So the tree warden, for some reason, in state
It's in
statutes,
state statute.
is a 2-year term, but it's inconsistent, and,
I agree with, hi, Paul Hovey again, I agree with what Judy is saying, which is that a lot of this came from state statute. Over time, you appointed the assessor, you appointed the internal auditor because it was a check on making sure that they were doing a job. I don't think it had anything really to do with private sector versus public sector. It was just, this is the law, towns do this. A lot when there was no RTM, it was open town meeting. It's, back to that point. So I don't know, does that align?
I understood it was state statute.
State statute. That's the answer.
yeah, that's the origin of those terms. Yeah, I think you're right.
I think just with cause, to your point, Bill, if you keep records of any, behavior that's not acceptable, or mistakes, or whatever it is, I know in the past, when I came in, there was very little record of any sort of, people had, for example, somebody had lots of anger management classes in their file, but never anything about why, so, we had to do a lot of cleaning up there. So if you just have records of if somebody does something that's not appropriate in the workplace, it's in their record, right? And then if it builds to a point where there's a crescendo and you have to say, okay, you know what, you're done. Pick your thing, sexual harassment, whatever, not showing up for work. And I think you just have to keep good records. But aside from that.
Yes.
So like I said, we fully expect to receive great direction from you on how to reconsider. One point I would raise, that public comment has raised this again several times, and Ms. Wackerman was starting to go there. The advice we've gotten from the town attorney is that the home rule essentially allows us to have longer terms than the minimum required. For example, the tree warden to 2 years, yes, state statute, but home rule says you can actually have it longer than that if desired. So that's come up with public comment for the tree warden, I think the health role, and maybe one other, so.
Yeah.
Could we do indefinite? Could that
I
be?
think so, we can check with Phil, but I think so.
Solved.
Next. We'll get clearer language, though, to move forward to, but
Well, maybe just ask
And on the,
the charter attorney.
on the issue of the chief operating officer being ex officio, that is not, it's not a hill I want to die on. I think it would be very helpful, but can we adopt Paul's, the way Paul stated it? I think, that's doable, if I can't make a meeting, or, if the first select person can't make a meeting, or a select person can't make a meeting, and designate the COO, just send an email to the chair and saying, they can't make the meeting, I would like the COO to be ex officio at this meeting, maybe there's some language we can put in around that. So it's not, not a carte blanche.
I'm more of the sense that not every single, I know we read some emails over the last couple of weeks where, not every single detail needs to be in the charter, right? It's more of a a governing document, and we have our town code, and then we have all sorts of stuff. I think something as simple as that, we've gone a long time without having to designate a specific staff person to have ex officio status at meetings. I think that the first select person is respected by and large, maybe sometimes not, by chairs. But, you could say, hey, listen, I can't make it. I'm going to send you some information about my opinion, and I'm going to have my staff person show up there tonight and answer any questions you may have. I think the ex officio gives almost this power, I'll just say, as someone who served in the role as first select person, I would prefer to send my information to the chair and say, here's what I think about it. And I'm gonna have my person come and be in the meeting, but I don't want someone else trying to decipher how I want my words spoken, because they may not necessarily be exactly the way I would say it. People make mistakes or people take liberty with their words. But I think for the most part, people are fairly open, right? If you want to send someone on your behalf, then they can meet it. I definitely don't think they should be voting in place of the first select person. I think that is completely inappropriate.
Well, that was not in there. There was,
Okay.
it was ex
Gotcha.
officio without vote.
And obviously what you said, Christine, about, executive session as well. So I don't know if it necessarily has to be memorialized in the charter. I just think, you have a conversation with people and you try to establish relationships. I'm not sure it needs to actually be in there.
Well, I think in some instances, chairs of different boards and commissions would welcome having the administration there
Sure.
to answer questions and give information.
Right, but they could also, listen, if you see something happening, and it's coming up at a board, and you're the leader of the town, you're gonna have your information sent ahead of time. I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned about that. It's an email, it's a phone call, documents.
I guess I had a question. I actually think it makes sense to have someone ex officio, because even though I know they may not perfectly speak for you or for the first selectman, it is really helpful. I mean, there were a lot of times on the RTM that we would like to have known, or we have known what the first selectman, what the policy reason is, or what they're thinking and how this fits with other things in town or whatever, that provided more information that was really helpful to us. And I'm wondering if by saying ex officio, I'm just thinking of the RTM because that's my experience, they would sit at that table and be more free to be called up to talk. Is that sort of the benefit?
Well, they could
participate,
initiate, a discussion. They could make a motion.
right?
I could think of some examples where, you have, it's not just the administration's point of view, but sometimes you have a member of the administration who is the expert on a given topic. So I would say on the Penfield, fill issue, or FEMA, Tom Bremer, when I came in, was the expert on FEMA. He's the only one who dealt with FEMA. And if I were at the Board of, the Board of Finance, or if I were first selectman then, I would have wanted Tom Bremer to have ex officio status at a Board of Finance meeting to make sure that he would be able to have his voice heard. And, those situations arise quite frequently when you've got someone in the administration, especially in an David Becker would be an expert on a specific topic that he might even know more about, a topic than I do. And I would want him there and be able to, participate.
But, to that point, Bill, Mr. Bremer would go and talk about Penfield, and so did I had nauseam. But he didn't need ex officio status to do that, right? He just, called on by members of the RTM, or mostly I was at those meetings because we were the ones presenting it and trying to get buy-in to get it done. But if he had questions about fill pile stuff, right? He was asked, and no one said you can't because you're not ex officio. They knew he was the one.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Kind of taking the lead on the fill pile, and he was the one talking to the environmental attorney and bringing me memos, but he was very knowledgeable, and no one said, oh, you're not ex officio, so you can't speak. Because they wanted the information, you know, they didn't care who he was, like, they wanted to know.
That should be the way it works.
And then people were respectful about it. No one said, you know, get out, don't talk.
I don't think anyone did.
I don't know, it just.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Okay.
It sounds like we're kind of in agreement on
Yeah,
that.
Good on that one?
But there might be instances where it would be helpful, there are instances where it would be helpful, and, you know, it would be nice to have that potential channel. Yes, Commissioner Treshett.
This is also an area where we fully expect to get guidance from you
Okay.
to make some revisions. Clearly, we do not expect you to maintain the ex officio in all boards and commissions, et cetera, language. Once again, ask for some direction around if you want to go more in the direction of specific delegated instances, not even bringing it in and relying on kind of past practice. We can go different ways, but some direction from that perspective, but we do fully expect to receive direction in this area.
Okay, thank you. There was the issue of Board of Ed. Do you want to bring that up or now, or do you have another?
I mentioned that I would just want to move it forward again based on the recommendation that the Board of Selectmen first moved
Yeah, so
forward.
last Charter Commission, that was a non-contentious issue that had bipartisan support, and they did
The 6-3.
Board of Ed?
Board of
Oh.
Ed on the fact that, you know, every 2 years, there's a Board of Ed election where there's only 4 seats up. Each party puts forward 2 seats, and all 4 of those people automatically get elected. So there's no competition in the race, because unless a party's going to put up more people than seats, but really what tends to happen is if there is a primary, the primary is the election, or if there's no primary, the head of the party puts forward 2 candidates and they're automatically on. And last time around, they adjusted it to be more like the Board of Finance, where in those years you could win 3 out of 4 seats so that it would make it a competitive election. And I don't recall hearing any dissent about that point. And I think that would have passed had it been broken out as, you know, a separate question. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I think the reason it didn't make it through, that was explained in one of the meetings, was that, you know, you polled the party leaders about how they felt about this, and one was all for it and the other one was against it. I think that should be reconsidered for sure.
Once again, we expect to receive guidance on this one, and that was some of the input. In the end, the primary reason why we didn't bring it forward is in our assessment, the Board of Ed seemed to work very well today, and while we saw the benefit from an election perspective and choice, voter choice perspective, we were concerned about the potentially unintended consequences of changing the status quo. But there's some people who have a lot of experience on the Board of Ed who really debated that kind of premise, that you would upset the current balance. So we'll reconsider it.
Well, I do think the Board of Ed, you know, it's not a particularly partisan board, but I do recall one election that 2 people from one party were put forward that, you know, and they were automatically on.
It was a coup.
It was sort of a coup.
It was a coup.
Yeah.
And it was very unfortunate, and it snuck up on us. But listen, I think I go back to 2006 when the charter was reopened, and there was, we had just come off this, massive 10-year, 6-year, or whatever argument about the high schools, and about all this stuff. I was super involved in it, and there was a sense in the air that Board of Ed members were not accountable. Like, once they got on, they were on there for 6 years, and they're rolling their eyes at people as they get up. Believe me, there were some members rolling their eyes at parents sharing opinions, which actually propelled me into public service. And I was like, oh, no, you don't. So, so there was that sort of thing going on, and so they wanted to have some shorter terms. It was funny because some of my, adversaries during the high school debate and I joined together and came and argued against the way they were going to change it, because we said that at some point in time, there would be nobody with any experience on the board. There would be like all these new people, and they'd be sort of doing Groundhog Day, like, oh, later start time, oh, like this. And like, it's like, yeah, we talked about that till we fell asleep at the table. So, there's all these things that sort of, if somebody's not there to say, hey, by the way, there's a study on this, or there were votes on this, and, whatever, surveys. I think we've had it now for a while. Listen, I personally think it's fine the way it is. You don't?
I don't. I think, I have a problem with just 4 people basically, being handpicked by each political party and not going out there and, earning.
You think going back the way
I think that it should be.
it was?
I think having it not be competitive for those off years, and it's not just a given that.
Changing the terms
I
back?
think,
Not the term.
not the term.
Oh, what do
you mean?
Not the term, but
Just to allow the
to allow
balance
it to be.
such that it's a
potentially
competitive race that people have to knock doors.
that it can be a competitive race on the years that only 4 members are being
So
elected.
you're saying no minority rule or minority representation?
That it can be a
In the midterm.
6-3 majority on the Board of Education.
It has been though.
Well, it has
It
been.
has
It
been.
has been in those instances where someone has resigned from the board, and in those instances, there needs to be an election to fill the seat. And I said that's how I first got on the Board of Education. There was a 6-3 for a short amount of time, and I don't think it really necessarily made a difference. But I do think that getting out there and campaigning and really needing to earn your vote by the people is a valuable exercise.
Board of Ed is such a sort of like, having served on it, for
I
6
think-
years, I feel like people who are brave enough or nice enough to even serve.
Well, I mean, I think that this
It's
is,
a lot of work. It's not a glamorous job. It's a lot of arrows pointed at you from upset parents, a lot, and it's not lovely. It's actually not. I mean, I think Board of Ed meetings get way more people than any other board in town, right? I don't think anybody goes to Board of Finance meetings or RTM meetings, but parents care about their kids and they show up.
parents care about
They
their.
email and they call and they're very passionate, which God bless, they should be. So, listen, I think that, yes, there should be.
Even more of a reason why, in those midterm years, that those parents should have a right to vote for
Right.
the people to represent.
Right.
Right, I agree, and there's not a whole lot of people, I think, chomping at the bit to do it. Let's be honest.
It may be a moot
I
point,
mean,
but.
62,000 people were like, hi,
Yeah.
anybody want to do this? And everybody's like,
Yeah.
It's true.
Well, I mean, I think that if it ends up being that it's still just 2 members from each party to fill 4 seats, that's the way it ends up being. I mean, there's still potentially,
I think you still
But
need
I-
to have,
but
so
I-
you're saying 6-3, right? Is that what
I'm
you're
saying that
Yeah,
it
well,
needs to
that-
be just like Board of Finance.
That assures that 18,000 people will be voting for a candidate as opposed to how many people show up for
I
a
mean,
primary,
I think
like
that one year
100?
that we're speaking, I mean, it was
The incident we're talking about, I think 100 people decided
less
who was
than
on,
Yeah,
yeah,
And it was, it was a sneak attack, so.
yeah. Yeah.
Can you guys?
Can you go up to the,
Party change the
Yeah, I'm just gonna reference the page number, it's not public comment. Hi, Jen Jacobson. If you guys go to page 23 of the red line version of this charter and just read letter A for me out loud.
What's the section?
8.2, 8.2.
I don't know page number.
Your red line version does have page numbers,
So you're saying 82A?
2A.
Right. So this refers to what a select person, Vitale, was speaking about. Composition, the Board of Ed or Education shall consist of 9 members, no more than 6 of whom shall be registered with the same political party.
Already in the charter. The problem is 2.2.
Right.
right?
Right, so you have a conflicting provision, so technically speaking, it should be able to get to 6.3. That's already pre-existing language in here. So one of those two things has to be reconciled, right? So that, I said that last time.
Well, that's where I want to, legally, it doesn't, it works because of that situation where it can get to 6.3 in this.
Only by a vacancy.
Vacancy
Yeah.
situation.
Then at least put that in then, if that's how you want it to be.
But
Because I read, right, the public says, well, what are you talking about? It doesn't say except for a vacancy.
right,
It's a-
Yeah, no one knows
So
what the
it-
statute means. What does the
Well,
statute mean?
what does what mean?
What does the chapter 170 of the general statute mean?
That's that's the entire Board of Ed statutes.
Oh, okay, the whole thing.
So, I mean, this is one, once again, where we're expecting to get feedback, and I would say that I'm assuming the feedback will be around changing the party balance requirement in the off-year election. That, from the 2-2 to allowing a 3-1, which would then, get to the 6-3 potentially on a more regular basis. So if it's anything beyond that, please, give us direction on if you're wanting us to think about changes beyond.
I mean, I wouldn't want us to change just because of what happened that one time, because actually, that was my party.
I would.
And no, because our party actually changed its rules.
Oh,
Because
okay.
before that, the Republican Party always had a caucus. They didn't handpick their candidates internally. They opened it up to any Republican registered in the town of Fairfield, and those people could just show up if they happen to know about it and vote, right? Whereas the Democrats always said, in your meeting, just your membership got to choose who was gonna be the nominee. So, we always, the Republican Party, my understanding, from even before I was involved, the town RTC always felt proud of that, that they weren't sort of doing the party boss thing behind the scenes. They were opening it up to the broader Republican Party in town until a bunch of people showed up and voted for people no one wanted. And so but then now the rules have changed and they mirror the Democrats' rules, and that's not gonna happen again.
And nothing against either political party and the work that they do.
No, I'm just saying that's why.
I get it, and but my preference would still be just to bring it closer to just vote to the people. And have it just be part of the proposed revisions, because it would be ultimately the people who choose.
And to me, I mean, if it's in line with, I don't know, Jen was saying about maybe being more clear on the B, if you wanna.
Well, likely what we would do is directly address her point on 2.2C, which is where the party balance piece is written. And we would, if given that direction, we would look at essentially language that gets us to a 3-1 versus a 2-2.
All right. Yes.
I have something that that has not been brought up. No, and I know, and part of it, and just to defend myself a little bit, part of it is for the town officers that are listed. Mr. Calabrese is now, there's a new position, relatively new position, Director of Community Services, that is not in the charter, and it's just for consistency's sake. I feel that it should be, that if we're going to be outlining, especially since people who report to him are in the charter. And I know that, there's everything creating this new position was totally within the first selectman's purview. But it just seems that moving forward, why wouldn't we add it? For clarity of just an understanding of,
That would be something we should talk to the town attorney about. I don't,
and I'm kind of just,
He
I'm
would
just
think it-
raising it just as a.
have you talked to him about it?
I have not spoken to him about it. I wasn't sure if he was going to be at our meetings and was going to, just wanted to.
Yeah, that you're talking about. Could somebody sum that up?
Mr. Calabrese was the Director of Parks and Recreation. He is now the Director of Community Services. Is that his official title? He is now the Director of Community Services. I did not submit this to the commission in public comment, in part because the position wanted to get through the town budget process and make sure that the funding was going to be available for this position. It's relatively new. And somewhat a work, when it's relatively new. I would say it all transpired within the last 3 months, March. I think that so I bringing it really just to my colleagues for.
Yeah, I think we should get some legal advice on that because the legal opinion on that was that we could do that sort of, you can have a position that's not in the charter and the first select person can create a position that's not in the charter. So putting it in the charter sounds like it would have to be in the charter. And if you don't need it to be in the charter, why would you put it in the charter?
Well, I mean, then couldn't every position that's listed in the charter that's not required by statute follow that same reasoning? And I bring this up just for consistency, that if, that you could, the first selectman could just decide that we need.
They are all required by statute, aren't they?
Is a Director of Parks and Recreation required by statute to be in a town charter?
This is a big topic. You probably should have a meeting with the town attorney on it.
Yeah, and I would just really bring it I don't want to leave something out, and for consistency's sake, and we did get some emails questioning whether or not these positions should be in the town code and not in the charter.
All those positions in the
No,
charter?
the chief of staff and COO.
Like some of the positions that are listed in the charter,
Oh,
it's just,
I think-
why are some positions in the charter?
well, there are positions in the charter that are required by
By
state
statute.
statute. The COO and chief of staff were put in the charter. I think this has been an ongoing, agreement with the prior administration that put these in the charter because I think rightfully so, and there's a fear that they get politicized and someone comes along and on the RTM and cuts the position, and which happened.
Board of Finance could do
The
it.
Board of Finance cuts the chief of staff position because out of for whatever reasons, for political reasons, and those but I'm not asking. I didn't ask for the chief of community services to be memorialized in the charter as a, then you're tying the hands of a future, town leader that would have to have that position. But, I mean, that's what we're essentially doing with the COO and the chief of staff, which everyone always want. Well, people want that. I don't think.
For conversation purposes, all right, obviously it's a brand-new position, but my understanding when this was presented to us in the budget, that position was also overseeing Park and Rec. So they were basically doing two jobs. They were still like the Park and Rec director, and they were also what is the job called again?
It's chief of community services.
Chief of Community Services.
So it sits above human services and parks and recreation.
Right, so, but just to memorialize sort of, right, say for example, a new first select person comes in, in the next election. And they want to keep it, or they want to just let that person go back and be
Parks and
rec
Rec.
director, right?
They can.
But the person is still sort of protected, right? Or the position, or, because what I'm
If
hearing.
it's in the charter, it would be.
No, if it wasn't, right? Like what I'm hearing Christine say is that she thinks maybe it should be protected or memorialized.
In the charter.
But I don't think that this position is political, right?
No.
As we've said, you know, the CAO was new. I brought that to the forefront when I came in, and I
Right.
did it because, you know, the corruption issues and the fill pile, and I was like, oh my God, like, help me. And now it's carried through, and I think there's been a agreement amongst different parties that we think this is important, our town, because for many years it was like, oh, you gotta run lean, you know, we're government, you know, don't tax people, but you also need a government that is like working and paying attention, and there's a lot going on. It's a big town. So I think we've come to the point where we believe a chief of staff and a CAO, COO is something that's really needed.
Yeah, and I would add that those positions have been under attack.
Correct,
And
correct.
so memorializing them in the charter is to protect those positions so that the first select person doesn't have to deal with
Right,
that, you know,
the crap.
the crap.
Right, so,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, but you're right.
Um,
It is real BS.
But I think what Christine is saying is that she wants to, you know, because it's new, maybe sort of protect it, but I don't see that position being politicized. You know, it's human services, it's park and rec, we all, like, I've never remember anybody politicizing that position. And you know, I've been here my whole life.
And I'm not looking at it for like adding positions to the charter because if we don't add them, it's going to be politicized. It's more that we've got, just for a clear understanding of who's running major departments of this town. And right now, this Mr. Calabrese, the director of Parks and Rec, we have a new director of Parks and Rec now, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there is somebody under.
Oh, I thought we were having an assistant handle.
There's the assistant has been,
She's not the director, she's the assistant, under Anthony.
she's running Parks and Rec under Anthony, but he's,
Because that's what we were
What's her
told.
title?
I think it's Director of Parks and Rec. Yeah.
Well, I think,
Well, can I ask you a question? Like, why wouldn't the first select person have the authority to put people in positions?
I'm not debating that. I'm not debating the first selectman's authority to put people in positions. Like you've already done that. And now that you've done that and it's new, I'm not debating that.
But,
Now
and the
that-
next first select person should have the, potential to undo it if they want. This one came about, Paul's from West Hartford. So West Hartford has a chief of community services where they leverage human services and Parks and Rec under one department to get for synergies between the two. And that is something that I thought made sense. We have like a senior center, West Hartford has community centers. Fairfield has a senior center that could be used more as a community center. It was how do we leverage our assets more? And we have a person who's great at programming. I mean, that's not a charter decision. I don't think that should be a charter thing. I don't think that should have to go through the charter. That should be a management decision. And I feel like in this instant, like there were people trying to micromanage me on that. That went through the budget, so you can manage it through the budget.
I'm not debating the creation of the position or the value of the position. I think that it was a great idea. But I guess I'm questioning in that we have the Director of Parks and Recreation in the charter. We have
Health and Human Services.
Health and Human we have the Health and Human,
Yeah.
we have that position in the charter. And under the current,
What else do we have in there?
those two positions are in the charter and they report to a position that's not in the charter. which just kind of seems a little bit, in terms of going to the charter to understand,
Yeah, not, some of that stuff
it just seems.
doesn't make sense. I don't know why some things are in the charter.
Well, because I think some things are in the charter because our town government has evolved. There's been management decisions that the first select person has been able to make. But now that we're at the position that we are revising the charter, I think that is the opportunity to at least have the discussion about some of the things that have evolved totally, you know.
And part of it is
Above
how the
board.
state's evolved, and some of these things have, you know, it could come out of, I don't know, Paul can tell us, out of some 1600 thing where towns need, you know, proclamation, every town must have a Parks and Recs report. I have no idea. I'm sure it could be a PhD thesis. But, you know, why would that mean we need to put everyone in the charter?
Well, not everybody, but this is just a position that has two people that are in the charter currently reporting to somebody. And I'll follow up with the town attorney on this, but,
Yeah.
you know, being that it is a new position that is overseeing, you know.
Yeah, you should definitely follow up with the
numerous
town attorney.
Numerous departments. Just wanted to raise the issue for discussion with
Yeah.
commission.
I actually had raised it in the commission.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I mean, no, in our discussion.
Okay,
Do you
so,
recall, was
But we
the
didn't
town
really-
attorney there?
No, we didn't have really a long discussion, but I remember asking Chris about that, and it kind of zipped by, but anyway.
or make it just, I mean, even if this is the guidance that we received, and this is the reason why we don't think it needs to be in there. I think it just to have clarity for the future and to have it memorialized. It's not, I'm not questioning the need for the position or how the position
Yeah.
became created. It's really just right now, want to be consistent and wanted this document in the future to understand how our town government
Yeah.
works. And right now, you know, the Director of Human and Social Services reports to the first select person on matters of administration and operation and to the Human Services Commission on matters of policy. But right now, they're reporting to the Director of Community Services. Or will, you know, as it moves forward potentially. And I just want to make sure that we're just accurately representing what we envision the future of the town being.
Is West Hartford, like the only town that has that? Does anyone know? That has the same thing we have?
Chief of Community Services? Anthony did a study of that. I don't think so.
Do you happen to know? How many?
I don't know how many towns. But I've called people in West Hartford. I think there's general consensus that it works pretty well in West Hartford.
So I look at it,
Employee of the department.
You're an employee of that?
I was, employee of a summer, worker, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I think that Anthony would be great in any position he does because he's a professional person with a lot of knowledge, and he's just a great guy. He's a hard worker, he's smart, and he, you know, you could put him, I don't know, anywhere, and he'd knock it out of the park. But that's not to say that someday they could just, you know, listen, I was very open to this. I personally thought it was adding a layer of bureaucracy to our government. I thought that our Human Services Department worked perfectly fine. No one ever complained. I think our Park and Rec Department worked perfectly fine. I thought it was adding a layer of bureaucracy. So I don't know that it should be memorialized in the charter because who knows who the next person's going to be, who the next first select person says, you know, I want some political appointment to be this person, and they're not that great, and then you're stuck with it. You know, not everybody's going to be an Anthony Calabrese. You know, we're supposed to be thinking about this document going, if it passes, because people, you know, get, you know, gun shy when they don't know everything about everything, and it is complicated. And to one of the emails points, you know, you make a lot of little changes, you know, and people are, oh, what are you doing, you know, and so they get all spooked. So I don't know. And it could be 20, and if it does pass, it could be 20-something years before we ever, I don't know. I don't really feel strongly about one way or the other. Maybe it's worth bringing up.
Yes, sir.
Just a general comment, not specifically about this situation, but Ms. Vitale's point on, why are some things in, why are some things out? We had lengthy discussions around that, primarily more on boards and commissions. And it is absolutely true, the charter could be a lot shorter. Mr. Brown, one of the electors, has consistently pointed that out. Our position as a commission was that matter if it was, even if it was well-intentioned about removing commission X, Y, and Z, it was likely to be interpreted as trying to quote unquote get rid of that commission. And we felt like it would make it much more difficult to make the broader changes that we think are important that we've proposed. So we did not pursue a drastic simplification by removing everything that could in fact be delegated to the code rather than the charter. That is clearly an option. If you wanted to pursue that, I would recommend a much longer time frame for a charter commission to consider that. So there's a lot there.
And I was not recommending that. I totally understand and agree. I raise it just to Ms. Kupchak's earlier point that we had been getting emails. This is a public hearing, and I very much appreciate those people that have come in person to give their public comment, but we have also received feedback from the public via email. And that is a point that was just raised. Just bring it up in part so the broader community can hear it and they can respond to it. Not suggesting that change.
Yeah, I don't recall getting CRC feedback on that position.
Oh, not on the position,
Oh, okay.
but I'm talking about why are some positions in the charter,
Yep.
why are other positions not?
Right.
Why don't you move these positions? They don't even need to be in the charter, they can go to town code, maybe you should do that. Like, we've gotten emails about that. And this one, it really is just, I just bring it up because it is.
Yeah,
It is new, and there are positions that are under this position that are outlined in the charter, and it
Yeah.
just seems that, I want to make it seems like a little bit of a hole, just to me personally, and it has nothing to necessarily, I mentioned Mr. Calabrese's name just as a point of reference to who we're talking about, but the position, if we believe in the position and we foresee this being the direction we should go, then maybe we should consider putting it in the charter, especially since right now, we're seeing some departments that have direct contact with our residents.
well, I feel uncomfortable with putting in the charter.
Okay.
And I've received emails, really kind of political emails on this, saying, you're violating the charter. By creating this position, you're violating the charter, and then the town attorney is like, you're absolutely not. He wrote an written opinion, and circulated that to the Board of Finance and answered that as like, you're absolutely not violating the charter by moving him, a step above, having two people report to him that weren't reporting to him. So that's why I'm a little uneasy about putting this in the charter, because it sort of seems to reinforce the idea that every management move you make, you've got to have a change in the charter, which you don't. There is some flexibility that you can, move things around, and I don't want to reinforce the idea that every major personnel change. I mean, for the idea of this move was to better utilize resources and assets of the town, which is happening actually. So, and because of it, and it is because of the person. But that's the reason I made the move, because of the person. That's sort of part of management. Sometimes you move people and give them more responsibility. And as a result, it became a charter discussion, which I don't think I would want to encourage.
And I am not at all questioning the way this position came about and the legality of it. I don't think it was a charter violation. Very clear, do not think it was a charter. You had the authority and the ability to do that. You made that move.
But the next
You were not
select
invited,
person
but you were not
should have the ability to undo it too, I think. You know, you don't want to take that ability away from someone. Yeah, that's just,
That can be,
you have your.
and it was really just more of wanting clarification, and to hear your thoughts on it, and Ms. Kupchak's thoughts on it, and bring it before the commission publicly, because as I said, I did not submit it in my comments previously, and the reason why was really at the time, I wasn't sure, there wasn't necessarily budget for it, and didn't want to lead you too far down a path for a position that, in the end, could end up not being funded.
Well, it was a very worthwhile discussion. Any other points that we should discuss tonight?
I would just make, if I could, some of the stuff that we received, could just be sort of cleanup, right? Language, and I would just point to this, well, maybe it's not completely cleaned up, but some of the other ones are. And I didn't think that we necessarily, Bill and Christine would need to say, point out, clean up language to the Charter Revision Commission. So if, for example, we got an email that said, instead of saying this, or maybe, or we say it's fine, the way you move it's kind of making it ambiguous, or, so let me just give this one, this is a specific comment and general comment on the changes in the ethics section. First, on town officers not being necessary because they are included in town officials. A sunset, what's there as possible, will it go away when the ordinance establishing a code of ethics is created? You don't typically see an ordinance being referred to with uppercase such as ethics ordinance. Ordinance is lowercase throughout the charter, here's an example, and so on and so forth. If you don't believe you need town officers in this paragraph as per definition, all town officers are town officials. So just little stuff like that. And then, saying the RTM hasn't passed an ethics ordinance yet. If they do, maybe it should be a code of ethics, not an ethics ordinance. Like maybe little things like that. I'm not an attorney. I don't know what it should or should not say, and I don't want to weigh in on something that I have no idea. But I just want to bring it to attention of people who have that legal background and who do. And make sure that we're, making sure that it's really clean.
That makes me wonder if you're getting comments and we're not getting copies of them. Does that sound familiar to you?
Might be coming to the Board of Selectmen and you're
Yeah.
not getting.
Maybe maybe I can ask Jen to copy and send us.
I
think,
one of us-
do you get Kathleen Griffin's?
Yeah, do you get hers?
Is that's one of hers,
Oh,
right?
that's one of hers. Oh, this morning?
They started getting, we started very early and a lot of them came in, but listen, it's helpful information. She's even putting out the code 10.14B. I'm more than happy to share it with your email, CRC.
CRC, not CRC 1.
CRC.
At Fairfield, yeah, okay, I'm happy to do that. Just some of that technical stuff.
At least one she's forwarded, that she sent to you, she forwarded on CRC, but I don't know if all of them have.
Well, this morning and this afternoon, there was quite a few, and a lot of them, some of them were technical in nature, and I just think that attorneys should be, listen, if she has a good point, she has a good point. She really studies this stuff. She's kind of like the next Judy Ewing. She studies this stuff very intensely.
Reads other charters
Yeah.
from other towns.
She
So do
really,
you, Judy.
she really, but she's interested. It's a passion for her, and God bless her. I may not agree with everything that she puts forward, but I respect the fact that she really reads this
She
stuff.
raises the issue.
She
which
really
is
does. One thing I do want to bring up while we're all here, is I know you guys are recommending, and I think I mentioned at our last public comment meeting, that the change of having the ethics commission go to simple majority as opposed to unanimous. And I think of all the town boards, I think that is the most important, and it's never been brought up by any other charter revision commission. And I think that it's always been recognized that, when when one person is in charge of, a party is leading the town, they sort of, equalize or undo sort of what was happening before. But the Ethics Commission has pretty much kind of been the beacon on the hill, right? It's not been a 2-to-1 vote, it's been a unanimous vote, which means that everybody believes these people are the people who were gonna be the most honest and open and ethical. And so I just think that would send a poor message to our community to change it. And then it almost politicizes it, where it's never been. My 2 cents.
Just a question that will probably need to get clarified by the attorney. You know this, Ms. Wackerman. Can we, as the commission, open topics that aren't directed?
I don't know, I've been wondering that. I don't know.
Take that as an example. Let's say the board does not direct us to look at that revision. Can we actually, by our own initiative, say, hey, we've reconsidered?
I would
I think,
not.
I think last time, the CRC got the Board of Selectmen approved a list, and that was all they could look at.
That's kind of my assumption.
Yeah. That's right.
Right, so that's my assumption here, where I'm
Yeah, we're gonna have to
assuming-
vote in a couple weeks.
Right, I'm assuming that we can correct like clerical errors or things like that, or minor or drafting error type of things. But anything substantial, I'm making the assumption that we have to be told, look at this, that. And those
Right, and we would
three
find that
things
out
are
at the meeting on the 24th.
Yes.
Right.
I think last time, I don't know if someone was actually editing. I can't recall if anything was changed at that meeting. I may have to go back and look at the videotape, whether or not
All the things were changed.
things are changed during that meeting and printed out
A lot was
for
happening,
for
yeah.
approval. Okay.
Well, I feel like there was just so many meetings, and long meetings. But
So
like these
you could
technical
come to the
things,
meeting.
they're okay to, like, for example, if we forward Kathleen's emails to them, the technical, a lot of this is technical. Assistant town
Yeah.
attorney, and like things like that.
We'll have to ask on whether or not we need to include that in the ask, the technical stuff.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah. Because the time to clean up technical stuff, the easy time's sort of passed, I think.
They have 30 days after the 24th,
Yeah.
and you guys have a charter attorney, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I need to go back and read all the Kathleen Griffin emails again, but
It's a lot, and
And
but I just feel
I missed
and
that,
the Judy Ewing.
I was working this, I missed the
Yeah.
ones today, I didn't get to read the ones that came
Yeah,
in this
if
morning.
there's any technical issues, I mean, we can just
Just didn't.
them.
well, I think just looking, right, and having attorneys say, yeah, this makes sense. You're an attorney, the charter attorney, Phil, yeah, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, and why
Yeah.
not? And then maybe have a discussion out of that on the 24th to tell us why not, as opposed to wasting your time for us to send it to you on the 24th and having it be part of your
Okay,
30 days.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
I don't remember who referenced it earlier. In 6.2, number 10, for first select person shall have powers and duties conferred upon the first select person or first selectman by ordinance. Just correct me if I'm wrong. Based on the last meeting, it sounded like the by ordinance was added just out of concern for the gender, the way. I would just maybe just some clarification on that, if by ordinance, effective, the date, It's on page 19.
What is it,
For select person, I think there's other instances in the charter too, shall have powers and duties conferred upon the first select person or first selectman by ordinance. And there was concerns raised that there could be new ordinances that were passed that would give more power to the first select person outside of the charter,
Or less.
or less,
That's not the
change.
intent.
Yes, and that was not the intent. The intent was, being that we're changing there, if it passes, that it's going to be gender, neutral. We don't want there to be any question if it says for selectmen in current ordinances.
Right.
So maybe just some language clarifying, ordinances as of a certain date, passage of.
So Bill, do you feel it's okay to, have them look at the technical stuff, that we don't actually have to, not that we're, have an opinion about it, because I don't have an opinion on technical, but if they say, yeah, that's a better way to word it, or we should word it,
I don't know the answer to that. I think I'll have to ask the town attorney as to whether or not it's incumbent on us to make a recommendation. Maybe I just need to go back and reread those comments.
but I do think we need the advice of an
Counsel.
attorney.
Yeah,
I
yes.
don't want to make a recommendation without.
Right.
So were you
But we can
saying,
go through, I'm sorry.
Just like the technical stuff.
were you saying before, Brenda, that between now and the 24th, you guys will talk to the attorneys about the things you want, or we should talk to our attorney? You will, okay,
I think
okay.
We're waiting.
I mean, it's okay for us to forward this stuff to them that they
Yeah.
haven't seen, just so they can review it.
yeah.
And I don't think it's against the rules to have the charter attorney take a look at it. I mean, why not? Save time.
I would say there's three other topics that I would guess you will probably provide us feedback on, just thinking back to the discussion. Not arguing we need to discuss these in detail again right now, but some concern heard raised around the ability of the RTM ethics ordinance to lower standards of ethics, which obviously is not the intent, but that was raised as a question. The concern around with the RTM having the ability to retain independent legal counsel, is that weaponized in any way? There's a question around that. And then ensuring that this board has a view to the 10-year capital plan, before it goes through the approval process. Those are the three topics that I think that a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
That would be great to get some direction on.
On the 24th. So we should really focus on those, you're saying.
Yeah.
In addition to everything that was discussed and whatever else you'd like to bring forward.
And
Right.
some people were writing us about the term, if someone leaves the office, if someone leaves the board of selectmen, there was some fodder or emails saying it's too long for a person to wait for 2 years, and I mean, I didn't really put my head around it, I just know it was raised.
That was discussed in the last.
Right. I think we should discuss it on the 24th together with, just to see what maybe, take the input that we have received from other people.
I thought you did sort of fix that in this.
Well, we've improved it.
You made it the next, if someone leaves within 18 months of taking office, then that seat will be up in the next general election.
Yeah, but someone said that's 2 years away, and that they get to serve for 2 years. Somebody brought up a point, I'm not saying I agree with it or not. What I'm saying is, someone said, that's really not fair, that they get a 2-year term when they didn't run.
And then you have to pay for a new election, but that's something,
I mean, versus today, you get a
I don't know how I
4-year.
feel about it.
4 years.
yeah, now it's 4 years.
Right now it's 4 years,
Yeah,
or
right.
unless you petition.
No, it's true. It's that balance of
Right.
practicality
Cost
of
and,
of
Yeah.
another election versus
Yeah.
leveraging the fact that the next municipal election.
Yeah.
But then on the same token, our party, someone said, well, the gentleman's agreement, we had a gentleman's agreement between the parties for many years. And if that party stepped down, a member of that party, the other select people would honor the parties, whoever the party chose to put there. I mean, I don't think it's been an issue. People, sometimes this is politics, sometimes it's an issue, sometimes it's not an issue. I don't know. I would really have to sit and think a little bit about it, reread with what people sent us, just to kind of get my head around their different viewpoints, and think what makes sense. To your point, Karen, do we need a special election? And by the way, who's showing up for it?
Mhm.
And if it's say, for example, one of the members of the majority party, and it's really even a smaller sampling, right? Because then it's a primary, essentially. That's only open to that party. So if Christine were to step down, you know, then what happens? It becomes a Democrat primary. And then,
No, I think it would be anybody, everybody votes, but what it is now is that the current, I believe the current party appoints the person.
no, but if there were an election for an open party seat, for example, you can't let all three members of this board be one party.
Oh,
So
I see what you're saying.
what I'm saying is Christine steps down, it's not an open election, it's a primary or a caucus or
Or just
whatever you
a-
want to call it.
Yeah.
And same thing, if a Republican steps down, it's not everybody, it's Republicans that come.
If they're the majority party.
Right, and, you know, that could, you know, if you look at it in hindsight, that could cause consternation between the parties, right? So you've got, you know, people in the Democrat Party arguing, fighting and primarying, and then you got people in the Republican Party primarying. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, I really don't. I just think it's something we should think about, all the potential complications of it.
Is there anything that we can do as a commission to help facilitate the discussion on the 24th? Happy to do so, just let us know. You don't have to answer that now, but if something comes up, just please, you know, let Ms.
Yeah.
Wackerman, Mr. DeWitt and I know. And
Well, the question about the legal, RTM having legal counsel, we kind of are, I thought we were kind of leaving that with the rule, you know, with the RTM on the rules to regulate, and I don't know if you've made any progress on that, or if you have any ideas.
We have, we're meeting again in a week or two to talk about it, but one thought that I had talking to, okay, sorry. I think if you leave everything to the RTM and the rules to regulate, they could say, okay, let's have a new rules to regulate committee, create them, and now say that the lawyer can be for anything they want. You know, that's easy to change. So I'm almost thinking in the charter, maybe there should be a little more boundaries around what the lawyer can do, because that's permanent, you know. And then the rules to regulate could be how the RTM would decide whether to ask and who to ask. And
Maybe be specific about what it would be used for,
yeah,
Karen?
I'm thinking
Like
in
to
the
help
charter.
write ordinances or?
And we're having trouble finding a way to not weaponize it if it's anything.
Oh, it
So
can
we're
be weaponized very easily.
So we're thinking we would limit it to just ordinances and things that the RTM does, but mainly when the town attorney is unable to help the RTM, which is really how this first came up for us.
You mean writing it that way so it's specific? Like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
I don't know. That's a thought that, you know, you guys can, I think having control in the charter is safer. And, you know, we're in the majority party, so I could say, yeah, let's do whatever we want, but if it's gonna change all the time.
Right, life changing.
And we do want it to be fair, so, that's to go. Something to think about is giving us suggestions for how to limit that or not, you can leave it to the rules to regulate.
I mean, I
but
think-
it's something that can be changed easily.
What would help me for our next meeting, maybe you would agree, is that the charter attorney be here. I'm assuming he'd be
Yeah, I think that
here.
we definitely need to have.
You know, because when you're bouncing things off, like tonight, like looking at this stuff, like it's good to have
Okay.
him.
Agreed.
And to me, that's the, you know, the legal piece, because you don't want to make mistakes. Say you did something and then inadvertently did something else. Oh, and the RTM, can I just bring it up, the discussion we had last time, that whole variance discussion, 10% greater than. I think, I would like to talk more about it at the next meeting on the 24th, simply because I kind of am siding with Judy's perception of if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I don't, you know, I asked the town attorney, was the town ever challenged on this in history? and there is no case law, right? We haven't been challenged, so, I just, another thing, like unintended consequences, right? I just feel like,
Challenge, but it wasn't about the 10%, it was about the process. Get the,
right, but I just think that bringing up that statute, or that Supreme Court case that Judy brought up, I loved when you said Carl Dickman's
Baker versus
name,
Carr.
because it made me very happy.
Baker versus Carr.
Yeah. Because that would be Carl, he's just so smart and always looking things up, and a gentleman. Anyway, I think it's worth kind of looking at that more deeply to make sure, because listen, if we've had it forever and it hasn't caused us any issue, I just don't see why we'd change anything. I just don't, like, we're not having a problem. We have enough problems, we don't need to fix things we don't have a problem.
Exceeds 10%. That's when.
Just maybe if the charter attorney could bring some more information for us to kind of review and talk about at the meeting. Have we ever been sued on this? Has this ever been a real problem? I think that Supreme Court case makes, kind of gets my antenna up.
Other towns use the 10%.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know if the charter or the town attorney could look up, what are the other towns using? That's all I have.
Okay.
Question on the timing. The way I read the report, or try to read the designated timeline, so I'm presuming today is the last public hearing. So in theory, within 15 days, that's your deadline to give us something. So I guess the assumption is you'll pass something the 24th? Or?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll probably work to start planning our meetings then, or late June and July. Because then after that, I think we have 30 days.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to leave it open. I mean, I'd like to have, I don't want us to be, saying at the end of the 24th, if we still have open questions, we're under pressure. And maybe there'd be a little room for another special meeting if we had additional questions.
I don't think we can do that.
Yeah, this is the
Makes like-
timeline.
Well, I think technically
Not
15
later
days
than-
from today, the 27th, so you do have a few
One way to
days.
send though, right?
Yeah, we have 15 days to
So it's tight.
make our
I
recommendations
guess you would have time in
to
theory
the
for
CRC.
Like,
a special meeting that week.
right.
just the 21st.
Yeah, you said 30 days after the 24th.
Well, 30 days
After-
after.
After that to us.
That triggers, the 24th's vote on all recommendations triggers that 30 days.
Our 30
Right,
days.
yes.
So for example, if we didn't necessarily, if we did it, we came back and cleaned it up on, another date, 26th, 27th or something. I'm just remembering when we had, there was so much, and listen, I want to support this. I think we need a charter change. I just want to make sure that we're not, what's that old saying? I used to say it in the legislature all the time. Oh my God, why can't I
Are we
remember?
not the baby with the bathwater?
No.
That seems to be the charter.
I know, don't let the
Perfect
The
beginning
perfect,
of good.
yeah.
enemy of good, thank you. But I kind of want to be close to perfect.
I think that-
Like as far as legal language goes, because when you look back, I mean, there's been brought up many times over the years, we really understand that. And every lawyer has a different opinion about everything, right? Well, that's probably not going to change. But it would be great if it was a little clearer so we didn't have all this bouncing around. Like one attorney thinks this and the other attorney interprets the charter this way or that way. Maybe being just a little bit more clear.
I think it would be helpful, giving us work.
But I'm not an attorney, so.
No, but I think that we've talked about a lot. I think that for our next meeting, I think that we should probably both, maybe, and Mr. Gerber, I don't know if you have thoughts on this in terms of preparation for the next meeting. Just have a master list of things that we, based on the conversations that we've had over,
In the email.
the emails of things that we want to discuss at the next meeting, just to keep ourselves focused, and if there's anything that we think we need legal guidance on before the meeting on the 24th, so our town attorney and the attorney that will be present that night comes prepared, so we're not hitting them, with questions at the table that they have to go back and research. I think that would probably move it forward and make everybody feel, comfortable and as close to perfect as we can get to move it forward to the commission, because I think that we all really want the same thing, all want to move something
Yeah,
forward.
we have 15 days to make our recommendations to the CRC, so I don't think there's flexibility on that.
Or schedule another public hearing.
Right.
I mean, listen, it's not like there was 100 people showing.
Well, as far as you have 45 days plus 15 days from when we submitted it.
Yeah,
12, I think, was technically the
I
day.
think so, May 12th,
12?
yeah.
right. I mean, I think we can, over the next couple of weeks, what we should do is
24.
flesh out, the way, we should come up with some language
Oh,
for
yeah.
them, so we're not doing it at the table.
Mhm.
And then we should also go back through the comments, the technical comments, and figure out which ones we want the town attorney to opine on. And then if we want to send those back for changes, we should compile them to adopt. Yeah. I mean, I think it's doable because there's not a lot, so.
But if we could get the charter and town attorney to review these code-like things
Mhm.
for us, because
Sure.
I don't, and Christine and nor you, just to give us, some info, then we could be more succinct at our meeting on the
Yeah,
24th.
yeah.
And you know what I just thought of? You were bringing up these positions in the charter and how we should add. I mean, I don't know, except for the political positions, maybe we should pull all the other positions out. The other ones are political, right? Or have been. But I don't know, the health director's in there, that's not political, human services, I don't know what else is in there.
There's a reason they're in there, right? Is that,
I don't know on each position. I'd have to go back and look.
yeah,
Some
Well,
are
maybe more
required.
ordinances.
Some are, I think,
Yeah.
closed.
Let the RTM, establish more ordinances instead of this charter that's like a brick wall to crack. It's in there and it's like you can't get at it, it's like you're locked in 50 handcuffs. Whereas if you leave a lot more to ordinance, then it can be massaged, changed, modified.
One technicality we ran into, because we talked about this a lot of us really wanted it to be a smaller, shorter charter, but you'd have to get the RTM to enact everything at the same time, really, or you have nothing guiding you. And then the RTM, maybe people vote against it for some reason, who knows why. So
Right.
that's a much more complicated thing, I think.
Having park and rec director, or some of these other little things, right? Does it necessarily have to be spelled out in the charter? I don't know.
I feel like at this stage of the game, making those kind of changes is to pull everything out.
I'm just.
And have it.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a little bit late. I mean, I think that that's something, especially if this is going to be reviewed in 10 years, that there's a lot of, I feel like we've started the list already for the next charter revision of things that we should be looking at and discussing as a community to get ready for the next
Well,
one.
I'm sure these two are gonna sign right up.
Yeah.
Yeah, not.
I'm gonna be in Tahiti, so
Nice.
I wish.
God bless you. At least you're not getting your head handed to you through the whole thing. That was good.
thank you. Again, thank you. You're amazing, Erin.
You have a very
and
calm
Karen.
way about you. You should be a judge or something.
Very calm always, and
Jill,
getting all this
Thank you.
praising.
any other public comment before we adjourn? Yes.
You gotta go to the podium.
I won't be long. I just
You
thought-
gotta go to the podium. Go to the podium.
She doesn't want to do it. That's how I feel, Judy.
Sorry, Judy, but we want the public to be able to see you.
I just took it up, my arthritis. This is about the technicals, when you were talking about what happens at the end. I remember what happened last time. The attorney, Mednick was his name? he said, if you have any comments, technical comments, send them to me, and we will do it in our office.
Oh, okay.
So-
Yeah, let's
and
ask
nobody-
Phil, yeah,
It's like if it didn't say select
Errata.
person,
Errata, yeah, I remember
if
that.
it didn't say select person, let them know, things like that.
That's
Yeah,
true.
Yeah. There
That
was,
guy- Yeah, that guy was, he's good, really smart guy.
all right.
Thank you, Judy. It's like your E.F. Hutton.
Yeah, thank you, Judy. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for coming. And Karen, thanks for all your work on this. Eric, you're amazing. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we
And
are
Paul,
adjourned.
come to more meetings.
Yeah, Paul.